The Zhuang language.
Hòa trộm.
Numbers.
Ít, ngày, long, lam, lầy, ha, lốc, sắt, kẹt, cứu, xịp.
Vocabulary.
Nàng, câu, ná, bùn, ngạc xiên, lử, ta, bùn ta, xế ta, lâm ta, hay ta, năng, hay năng, bác, ngà ba, hồ, lông má, ắc, khen, phùng, lạc phùng, cáp phùng, hớt, tung, thay nư, ha, ca, câu hồ, hẹn, ba hẹn, lạc hẹn, ta bầu, mắn úc, phần, linh, sòng hồ, lim, bất, tắp, ni, tay, lấy, cái xế lâm, vì, lâm, nấu, suốt, hay, nghìn, lợt cao.
The parable of the prodigal son.
Giê-xu sải nào, mì bầu thế mì sướng tắc lực, mì ngon tắc lực ý để tuế để nào. Bây xin mừng từ cậu ứng cái đây giải sản, phần hơi cậu ba. Có lợn bây để sâu từ, giải sản phần hơi sướng tắc lực để. Quế bố cây lưu xài, tắc lực ý để các từ để lưu phần đây xiên xài. Bấy linh tước dầu, bố cụ hẹn, dấu lạc két két, lần lần lăng lăng, luôn bằng láng xiên dài. Các lợn tế từ tế lưới mỹ xiên dài, sung láng liêu lợ. Tế láng lưới mỹ xiên dài liêu lè, sái ngắm lú gốc tầng, tước mướn ước hoàng. Các lợn tế dâu xiên phan tực ghèng mi bán phà. Tế dâu bấy lặng cứu hình tước mướn bầu tá còn. Dưỡng bầu mướn dâu bái tế bấy cuồng mẫu. Dấu mư tế yếu cứ ý gài hoàng mư tế. Tế tái liền lám mẫu dung ít lưỡng cử. Hòn tái liền cái này dung mi quần hư tế. Các lợn tế dâu xính lạc của tấu. Xí ngay rằng đấy gàn bươi cậu mì bần biên vần báng tế tá còn. Xí mì cứ tay ba. Hòn cậu táo dấu tí này ý gái yếu vậy. Căn lấy táo má xìm ta bê xuống lọ. Má tới thế nào. Bê cậu tắc xoay sáng tí. Xâm tắc xoay thằng mờn. Ta lấy này hơn. Cậu mi na. Xảy đây cu tắc lực mừng lắm lọ. Xí ấu cầu mừng. Sâu cậu xâm táng mừng. Sâu cung nhìn dương mớn. Sâu cậu sâu đây lọ. Tế dương này ngay nào lè. Sâu táo má gàn ta bê tế lọ. Tế má gàn mư tế. Quản lý lì gàn lưới máu ủ chạy. Hòn ta bê tế sâu yếu gần tế má lọ. Dưỡng ta bê tế sâu hết xích. Xìm quần ơ. Ghi ước bấy quết tử kì tế. Xúc tế. Quết xúc xúc. Các lọn thế nào. Bê cậu tắc xoay sáng tí. Xâm tắc xoay tầng mờn. Ta lấy này hơn. Cậu mi na xài đây. Cu lực mừng lắm lọ. Hòn ta bê tế tháo tế bố hệ nào. Quái thì má từ tiêu bố xấy đây tâu hư tắc lực ý cầu tán. Xâm tính hết phở hư tệ. Xài ẩu hài hư tệ tán ảm. Xài má từ tù sự lực bì mớn cá bài. Tấn gầu cứ lâu hư tệ bà. Anh huy lực cậu gái táo lì. Mì mì táo mì lọ. Các lọn cái quần dâu cứ áng lọ. Ngắm lú mưa này. Tắc lực tàu tế. Ta đỡ gây má. Má tầng hèn gàn lè. Tính nghĩ đỡ gàn. Mì quần sướng của tiểu ua. Hém vậy. Tế sâu dũ bố huế của tấu. Xám tế nào đỡ gàn mì ký mạt lây la. Dưỡng bố huế nào tế ní nào. Tắc nuông mừng má lọ. Ta bê mừng gần tế. Mấy ngày sắc dương lây. Sâu áng ơ. Từ tu sử lực bì mớn ca lợ. Tắc lực tàu tế tính lè. Xong đã thấy ý gái bày, bút lưng hấu gàn má lọ. Dưỡng ta bê tệ gọi là sâu ợt tấu heo tệ hấu má. Hòn, tệ tạo tuổi ta bê tệ nào. Cậu lữ hậu mừng bình cái lữ bị. Xâm tỉnh mừng, sinh mừng bái. Hòn, mừng tái tu dương plạ lực ệ. Chúng biết hơi cậu xấu cái bằng dầu cậu cử án kể. Hòn, tật lực mừng này nè. Thế tờ cái tài sản mừng. Chúng hoa hấu lặng cái lao cớ mượn phải liêu. Lại này thế bây mãi là. Hòn, mừng sông má sáng tới cá tu sự lực bì mướn lọ. Các lặng ta bê tệ tới đẻ nào. Lực hà lực. Mừng sương xây dấu tỷ này. Cậu lưới mì ế xuống tức cái mừng liêu. Gầu xây này ứng cái quy tắc nuông mừng. Gái táo ly. Mì táo mì áng bà.
Hi everyone, this is Samson. Today I'm gonna do something different from before. I'm gonna introduce you guys the Zhuang language, which I believe you have never heard about. Let's get started. 大家嚟，介後要黑 Samson 呢，問水血黑意人，問句介後諗黑片音平路，用油爹最佳有音平瓜乾代揀未鬧瓜鬧，介後爹牛揀人於馬林全揀妥，介後睇呀片音平等就最近來難嘛音平平路笨比句。So what is this language actually? By listening to this sample of the language, you might already have a brief idea about where it comes from. And you may already realize that it is a tonal language, and you might have spotted out some words that sound like Mandarin or Thai. In fact, Zhuang is spoken at the Sino-Vietnamese border. Specifically, it is a language spoken by the southern Zhuang people in Debao, Jingxi, and Napo counties or cities in the Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region of China. The name Zhuang is adopted from Yang, which is the autonym of the majority of the Zhuang people, together with Zhuang, which is the official name of the ethnic group. The speakers of Zhuang refer to their language as Gang To, which means local speech. It belongs to the Thai branch of the Kra-Dai language family. You may be confused because it sounds the same as Thai, which is the language of Thailand, and actually they have something to do with each other. Notice that the word Thai for the language family is spelled as T-A-I, without an H. The Thai languages evolved from a theoretical language called Proto-Thai, which was probably spoken around the 4th century in present-day Guangxi in China. Traditionally, Thai languages are divided into 3 branches: Northern Thai, Central Thai, and Southwestern Thai. Zhuang belongs to Central Thai. Therefore, it is closely related to other Southern Zhuang languages in Guangxi and Yunnan of China and the Tainan languages in northern Vietnam. Southwestern Thai is relatively close to Central Thai, and it includes the most well-known Thai languages, Thai and Lao. Northern Thai is the most distant from the other 2 branches. It includes Northern Zhuang languages, which Standard Zhuang is based on. There are some dialectical differences within Zhuang. The 3 main dialect groups are the Debao Fu group, the Jingxi Yang group, and the Napo Yang group. Of course, there are many more varieties which have different levels of ties to these 3 main groups. In this video, we will focus on the Debao Fu dialect. Zhuang doesn't have an official writing system. However, a local Zhuang script based on Chinese characters have been used for several hundred years. Interestingly, the Zhuang people only use the script to record oral literatures of the language, but nothing else. In this video, we will use a romanized writing system developed by me and the Zhuang scholar Liao Hanbao in order to accurately represent the sounds of Zhuang. The link to his documentation is given in the video description. In case you wonder, Hanbao is my Zhuang teacher, and we went to a field trip in the Zhuang speaking area to study the language. The Zhuang people have a tradition of creating poems. This is called Nyam Shui in Zhuang. People do Nyam Shui in many occasions in their daily life including greeting each other and as a kind of leisure activity. During Nyam-Sei, men form their groups and women form their own groups. These groups create new poems on the spot to respond to each other. The poems have to be sung aloud with multiple vocal parts. Nyam-Sei poems have to conform to certain rules, including the number of syllables, rhyming, and the tone of the syllables. We will analyze them in a linguistic perspective later. For now, let's have a look at what Nyam-Sei looks like. From the beginning of the 21st century, the young Zhuang people started to make their modern music. One of the most popular songs is called 谁赠的包, which means 德宝 love song. It contains a verse of Nyam-Sei. Check out the link in the video description and see if you can spot it out.
Now, let's start looking at some features of the language.
Phonology. Yang Zhuang has inherited quite a lot of phonological features from its ancestor language, Proto-Tai. One of them is preglottalized consonants. These consonants can be realized as implosives. To pronounce implosives, the glottis moves downwards and produces an ingressive airflow. Or, alternatively, the preglottalized consonants can be simply pronounced by adding a glottal stop before the main consonant. Let's hear some examples. Bao, meaning boy. Lai, meaning to be able. You, meaning to be at. Some of these consonants are found in Thai, Lao, and Standard Zhuang, but have been completely lost in Shan, De Hong Tai, and most urban Zhuang languages. Even in the Jingxi urban dialect of Yang Zhuang, these consonants have been lost. These words are pronounced as Mao, Lai, You, respectively. Like other Thai languages, Yang Zhuang is a highly tonal language. Most dialects have 6 phonetic tones. In the Debao urban dialect, all phonetic tones are illustrated by the sentence. The first 6 syllables illustrate all possible tones already. Then what are the last 4 syllables for? In fact, if a syllable ends with P, T, or K, it can take less tones than other syllables can. Here in the Debao urban dialect, they can only take 2 distinct tones, as in ba and ga. However, in some dialects, these 4 syllables may be pronounced with 4 different tones. The first 2 tones, illustrated by Lon and Moi, are category A tones. Category A tones are important in the rules of Nyam-Sei poems. Let's take a look. As we've seen just before, each group takes turn to create verses. In each round, a group sings 2 sentences of 7 syllables each. The first sentence in a round is called the upper sentence, and the second is called the lower sentence. Here are 2 rounds of a Nyam-Sei poem. Notice that I will read the poem in the Debao Ma'ai dialect, which is commonly used for oral traditions. A difference between the Debao Ma'ai dialect and the Debao urban dialect is that tone 1 illustrated by thorn is pronounced as thorn in the Ma'ai dialect with a high falling pitch, and some tone 1 words in the urban dialect take tone 2 in the Ma'ai dialect. Let's begin. Gao gao moi moi son te thai, ni ni ngo ngo thai bek lai, ban bei rao zo yang lan ao, po ge sao bao jing sei nai. The first round of a Nyam Sei poem is called Zhang Go. Zhang Go is the foundation of a poem because it decides the rhyme to be used throughout the whole poem. The final syllables of the two sentences have to rhyme with each other, and they have to be in the category A tone. In this poem, Tai rhymes with Lai, and they both carry a category A tone. The non-initial rounds of a Nyam Sei poem have a different format. Only the last syllable of the lower sentence has to rhyme with the previous round, and it has to carry a category A tone. As you see here, Nai rhymes with Lai, but Ao doesn't. However, the non-initial rounds have a rhyming requirement called waist-foot rhyming. Waist-foot rhyming contains a foot rhyme and a waist rhyme. The foot rhyme is the last syllable of the upper sentence. The waist rhyme can be one of the syllables in the lower sentence except the last, and the fourth syllable is considered the best. The foot rhyme and the waist rhyme must rhyme with each other, and they cannot carry a category A tone. Here, Ao is the foot rhyme and Bao is the waist rhyme. Waist-foot rhyming poems are found in most related languages such as Thai, Tai-Lu, and Northern Zhuang languages. Therefore, it can be considered as a tradition of the Proto-Thai society.
We still haven't talked about the meaning of the poem. Now I'm gonna give you some background knowledge in order to make you understand the poem better. The Yangzhuang people don't simply address each other by the personal pronouns gao and moi, which means I and you respectively. It's considered rude to address in this way unless the speakers know each other very well. Actually, there are formal versions of the personal pronouns ni and ngo, which mean you and I respectively, and they are Chinese loans. They are commonly used by strangers to express politeness.
Instead, it is common to address people by kinship terms or their titles. Some common examples are bei, which means elder sibling, and nong, which means younger sibling. If two people are of similar ages, the younger person should call himself nong and call the older person bei, and vice versa. If two people are about a generation apart, kinship terms like lan, meaning nephew, yi, meaning aunt, and ao, meaning uncle, are used. This way of addressing people is found in related languages like Thai and Lao, but not in Northern Zhuang languages. Now, here comes the translation of the poem. Saying gao and moi sounds very rude. Saying ni and ngo sounds too strange. So we should call each other uncle and nephew. Old people, girls, and guys always greet each other. Vocabulary. The vocabulary of Yangzhuang comes from different sources. There are 7 identifiable layers. They are a Kra-substrate, Native Thai, Old Chinese, Middle Chinese, Southwestern Mandarin, Cantonese, and Standard Mandarin, in chronological order. We will begin with the Kra-substrate. Kra is another branch of the Kra-Dai language family, which Yangzhuang ultimately belongs to. Some Yangzhuang words of possible Kra origin are dun and dum, meaning this and that. This makes Yangzhuang interesting because it is the only Thai language that does not use native Thai words to mean this and that. The native Thai layer is the major source of vocabulary. It mainly contains words that represent fundamental concepts and concrete objects. Some examples are bai and van.
meaning to go, and day. If you speak Thai, you may already recognize that they are cognates with bai and one, which have the same meanings. Most numbers in Yangzhuang are borrowed from Old Chinese. The Yangzhuang word for 6 is kya. The consonant kya strongly suggests that it is borrowed from Old Chinese gro. This layer contains concepts that exist in a basic society. An example is 所语, which means book. The cognates of kyo and 所语 in Thai are hok and si, as in the word 能死. The Middle Chinese layer contains words to express slightly more abstract ideas. For example, 岁干 is the word meaning time. The same word is reborrowed in the Southwestern Mandarin layer as 细干. The Southwestern Mandarin layer is the largest among all Chinese layers because it was the teaching language in the early modern era. Therefore, it contains words to express an early modern society. It also has systematic correspondence with the phonology of Yangzhuang. One more example is 开始, meaning to start. The Cantonese layer is relatively small, and it doesn't have systematic correspondence with the phonology of Yangzhuang. The word for to have a haircut is 飞 in Debao urban dialect, but spelt with a different tone marker with a grave accent in Jingxi urban dialect, even they are pronounced in the same way. Finally, the standard Mandarin layer contains mainly words having at least 3 syllables. Therefore, many proper nouns enter the language as a standard Mandarin layer. Grammar. The basic word order of Yangzhuang is SVO, which is the same as English. Let's take a look at the following example sentence, meaning, I had a meal. 高斤烤. A word-by-word translation is, I eat rice. Yangzhuang is an analytic language. It means that words do not change their forms to express grammatical meaning. Therefore, the verb 斤 can refer to an action happening in the past or the future. To say something that happened in the past, one may add a word indicating the past like วันว่า, meaning yesterday. So we have วันว่า高斤烤, meaning I had a meal yesterday. And we have วันยก高斤烤, meaning I will have a meal tomorrow. Notice that the verb กิน itself doesn't change. However, there are still ways to add meanings to a verb. To indicate a finished action, we add the particle 呀 after the object. Therefore, 高斤烤呀 means I have had a meal. To indicate an action that have been done completely, we add 了 instead. For example, 高斤烤了 means I have eaten the meal completely, and there is no left over.
An interesting fact about the verb กิน is that it can mean to drink or to eat depending on the context. This is very common in Thai languages, but it might be a striking fact even for linguists.
Let's take a look at another example. 爹最幹禮. A word-by-word translation is, he or she be person good. The whole sentence means, he or she is a good person. Notice that the adjective comes after the noun, unlike English. To negate the sentence, we add 美 before the verb and now after the object. The whole sentence will become 爹未最幹禮now, meaning he or she is not a good person. Another interesting fact we see here is that Yangzhuang uses the same word for he and she. It might be a striking fact for linguists, too. Negation becomes tricky when it comes to the verb 美, meaning to have. This word looks exactly the same as the negation particle 美. To say, I have books in Yangzhuang, one says 高美所语. To express to not have, we use a special structure 美 now plus the noun plus the particle now. Therefore, I don't have books would be 高美 now 所以 now in Yangzhuang. Let's see how nouns work in Yangzhuang.
We already know that 所以 is the word for book. If one just says the word 所以, it refers to the general idea of books, but it doesn't specify any number of books. It could be just one book or 10 books. It could be a specific book or any book. If you want to mention a specific book, you add the classifier for books, sek, before the noun. Then you would say 石水. This usually translates to English the book. However, sometimes it may also mean an indefinite book depending on the context. Now, let's specify the number of books. We use the structure number plus classifier plus noun, so we have 2石水 for 2 books and 3石水 for 3 books. However, for the number one, we put the number after the noun instead. So one would say 石水了 or 石水有, where o is the reduced form of 了 and comes after the noun. This structure only works for the number one and can be found in related languages such as Thai. Finally, we will learn how to say this book and that book. Yang Zhuang has 3 demonstrative adjectives, 等, 舉, and 等. 等 translates to this in English. 舉 and 等 both translate to that in English, but 等 indicates a further object than 舉. To say this book, we use the structure classifier plus the noun plus demonstrative adjective, which is one of 等, 舉, and 等. Therefore, this book would be 石水等.
Before the end of the video, I would like to ask you guys a question. What kind of videos would you like me to make? I've decided to make another video comparing Yang Zhuang and Thai for the next episode. And I'm also fine with making videos about what languages I'm learning recently and how I learned them. Please let me know in the comment section. To wrap things up, I will let you guys listen to the story, The North Wind and the Sun in Yang Zhuang, so that you can have a better idea about what spoken Yang Zhuang sounds like. This story is called Lam Pring Va Tha Van in Yang Zhuang. It is translated and read by my Yang Zhuang teacher Ao Bao.
Mây văn nào Lâm hèn và thá văn yêu tầm tung chén dạ Kiang hỏi ác qua Lông kiang tế Ngam thánh mây phẩu con nào Phái qua mà Con tầm ní nông cung lưới đông ngầu Lông kiang tế dầu yan dạ lạ Phói rõi hỏi con tầm Thót cung lưới đông tầm ô côn Phói rõi dầu ác qua Bần bấy ní Lâm hèn dầu bốc mừng bao lâm á Phói rõi ná Tế vịt bao Kiang con tầm dầu vịt cốt cung lưới đông tầm khẩu bấy măn hêm Tóc lắng Lâm hèn hát ngay cái bộ đấy Để dài lạ Kém lắng Thá văn ngam ốc mà áo ấy đế tế Lưỡi lòng mãi chít đầu Còn tầm lê thót cung lưỡi tông tầm ốc nhằm mà tốc lạ Bấy ní Lâm hèn lê bì tao nhân lấy lạ.
That's the end of the video. Thank you and see you in the next episode.